Thanks, Ria. And I also just want to thank Sue for asking me to give this talk. I know you arrange some great speakers and some great talks on a weekly basis. So I have some big shoes to fill. So I hope I can do an okay job at it. I don't know if it's more intimidating presenting to a computer screen when you can't see anybody behind the screen or in person, but I do miss the in-person discussions and talks and presentations. So hopefully in the near future, we'll get somewhat back to normal. So the title of my presentation, as Ria alluded to, is Get Busy Living or Get Busy Dying.
I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think you ought to be doing this to yourself, Andy. These are just shitty pipe dreams. I mean, Mexico is way the hell down there, and you're in here, and that's the way it is. Yeah, right. That's the way it is. It's down there, and I'm in here. I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living. You get busy dying.
So one of my favorite movies, and I apologize for some of the language in that, but every once in a while we do have to get real with each other. And so starting this presentation, I want you to think about what's your prison. So in the Shawshank movie, there was every excuse as to, giving up hope or every reason to give up hope. And sometimes when we're about to exercise or need to do the things we need to do, a lot of barriers come in. Not enough time, kids' activities, too busy, work long hours, not enough energy, lack of motivation. And that can throw us off quite a bit, especially in this day and time. So think about what your prison is, and part of it is breaking that barrier and getting through that. So there you see a cigarette and a glass of wine. So what I'm going to ask you, with all those other excuses that we had up on there with what's your prison, if you are a smoker, or if you've ever met a smoker, have you ever met one that didn't find time to smoke? And if you wanted a glass of wine, have you ever not found time to have that glass of wine? So it comes down to habits. And really with exercise, we treat it as, this part of life that we can do, maybe we should do. It's good for us. There's enough education everywhere and information to say that we should be exercising all the time. But what it comes down to is, how do we make exercise like a cigarette? And how do we make it that it doesn't matter what other barriers that we have in life, that we can be able to exercise and keep ourselves healthy? Now, this is kind of a theoretical model that I use, and I've applied it in various situations with a lot of people, both personally and professionally. So it's called my wheel of success to optimal performance. And it comes down to 4 things: awareness, alignment, planning, and execution. So work, for example, we do strategic plans at work all the time. So you can come up with a plan and then you go to execute it and it falls short. So you go back to the plan. Maybe that wasn't the right plan, and you go to execute again. And there's frustration between people, individuals. Maybe this is your personal life, okay? But it goes back before the plan, and it's awareness and alignment, okay? So if you want to build habits in your life, you have to be very aware and truthful with your life and your lifestyle and different things that are going on. Because if you want to make that habit, it's not something you want to do for 15 days, 30 days. You want to do that on a continual basis. So it does have to align with your life. And so you have to be very aware of those barriers that exist in front of you to be able to create new habits, okay? New habits come down to 3 things. There's a cue, a routine, and a reward, okay? A cue, it might be a stressful event. Maybe something stressed you out, and now your routine is, well, I'm going to go have a glass of wine, or I'm going to go have a cigarette. And the reward is you feel relaxed after that. And so we can't get rid of habits, we have to replace them. So you want to replace that habit with what's a healthy habit. If there's a cue for stress, is my routine that I go to the gym right after work? Do I go to gym in the morning? and my reward is I feel good, I feel healthy. And so this is, if you've never read this book, it's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I strongly recommend it. And as humans, we have a commitment to weather the storm, and as humans, we seek gratification. And this can lead to chaos and stressful situations. Really, our life is shaped by pain or pleasure. We're either moving away from pain or we're moving towards pleasure. And again, when you're going through the awareness with yourself, you really have to, sometimes myself, I like the pain of a good spin class, okay? Because my reward after is that I feel better, I feel energized, etc. But you have to be real with all those facts, because what we want with exercise is that it just becomes a habit. It's not something that you might do. It's something that's a routine in your life. Now, there's enough education out there. There's enough information. I could litter these slides with stats in terms of the importance of exercise, but there are a few things that I do want to key on. So worldwide, musculoskeletal conditions, now that's muscle, bone, and joint conditions. So it might be osteoarthritis. It could be rheumatoid arthritis. Those are the most common causes of severe long-term pain and physical disability. Okay, so that's not a sprained ankle that you're down for 4 to 6 weeks. That's the most common cause of severe long-term pain and physical disability. Okay, so that's something that we really have to key on. Musculoskeletal conditions are the #1 reason people visit their physician and affect nearly 1 in 2 Americans and Canadians over the age of 18. From 1990 to 2010, and this is the concerning part, musculoskeletal conditions increased by 45% compared to an average 33% across other diseases. Why is that happening? Well, there's been an increase in osteoarthritis, obesity, some of it due to a lack of physical activity. Now, we also have to take in from 1990 to 2010, our society changed quite a bit. Okay, a lot less physical labor jobs. A lot of us are at a desk more, behind a computer, on our phones, etc. That's distracting us from the important habit of physical activity that we should be engaging in. So this is a busy slide, but if you look at the bottom left, this is kind of an important slide or an important section of the slide. So Twells in 2014, he talked about the rates of increase in people being overweight or obesity. And now we even have 3 different classes of obesity. There's obese class 1, obese class 2, obese class 3. And one of the most concerning parts with the increase in obesity is if you look around 2001, 2003 in the bottom left corner, so our obese class 3 is rapidly increasing. It's over a 500% change over the last 15 to 20 years. Now, if you look at the larger slide or the larger graph in the middle, kids between 15 and 19 years of age, 10 to 14 years of age, the prevalence is increasing with respect to those age groups. Okay, and so we really, as a society, we obviously have to keep ourselves active, but we really have to be mindful of the younger individuals coming up. You know, being morbidly obese at 14, 15 years old, that's a tough trajectory to kind of change and get back on the right path. There is a reciprocal link between obesity and depression. And all science aside, if we kind of think of the last year, okay, with COVID and the pandemic, gyms have been closed for a long period of time. We've been confined to our homes. We don't have the social support that we normally would. It's tough, and you're not getting outside. You're not exercising as much. A lot of my friends have put on weight. I put on weight, and it's not so much the weight I'm worried about. It's really your mental state. Okay, you start to get down on yourself. You start to feel lethargic. All those are reciprocal things that happen, and exercise has such an important link to all different aspects of our life that often we don't realize it till we're too far down the path. So in 2013, Rosenbaum talked about using physical activity to reduce depressive symptoms, and it's a valuable strategy to reduce the risk of developing depression. as society and a population, as we progress to further inactivity, the strength of this relationship really does increase. And honestly, if there's one thing the pandemic has taught us, is that when we're confined to a home and not able to exercise, not able to be outside as much as we want, it certainly does have an effect on mental health. So let's talk about physical activity or exercise, or more appropriately, just movement. And so this isn't a typo. I like to call it the movement. Okay, so yes, we obviously want to keep ourselves engaged in physical activity. I have a strong hunch that I'm already preaching to the converted. And so being involved in Reh-Fit or coming into this talk, you're either exercising all the time or you're very interested in it. How do we keep those around us active? How do we encourage people that are close to us, maybe friends, etc.? How do we get them over that hump to be able to exercise more often and stay healthy? So as I go on in this talk, I just want you to take a few seconds and I want you to think about what are you for exercise? Are you an ambassador? Or are you somebody that, you know, likes to build relationships and make friends? Are you an advocate where you can make the case, formal or informal? Do you need to provide evidence to a friend or a family member? Or are you an asker and you'll just walk right up to them and say, okay, you know what? We got to start exercising. We got to get you healthy. We got to get you moving, whatever that may be. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean, you know, the extreme situations. Exercise is a very satisfying social activity. So be the advocate, pay it forward. If you're somebody that does exercise all the time and you feel the benefits for that, I really feel it's our duty to pay that forward to people around us and keep them active and healthy. So I'm sure you've heard a lot during this pandemic. Where's the evidence? Or there's the evidence for this, or the research suggests this. As I mentioned earlier in the talk, I could litter every slide with evidence of the effectiveness of exercise for medical treatment. So Pedersen and Sultan in 2015 did a great review or meta-analysis of the positive treatment effects of exercise, and it actually spans across 6 categories of the medical curriculum. There's evidence, strong evidence, to support exercise as a treatment for over 27 chronic diseases and conditions. Now, these positive treatment effects span across several categories. Contraindications or side effects really are minimal, and that just scratched the surface. So I'm going to give you an example of a few of those charts. Again, there's evidence of treatment for 27 medical conditions. So we talked about musculoskeletal disorders earlier, and the effect that has on society as you age. And so again, there's strong evidence for exercise if you have musculoskeletal disorders. And it can reduce systemic inflammation, reduce inflammation in synovial fluid. And some of the contraindications are joint inflammation. So I often hear, oh, I don't know, I've got a bad knee. I don't know if I should exercise. I might make it worse, okay? Unless you have an acute situation going on, exercise is very effective at reducing systemic inflammation. So inflammation throughout your body often manifests where a joint might be injured. So if you do have an aggravated knee, well, if systemic inflammation builds up, guess what? Your knee also feels more inflammation and intensity of the pain. It's also effective, exercise is effective for treating back pain, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, etc. And one of the benefits, obviously, that you know, and being involved in the Reh-Fit is they have exercise specialists there to guide you through that. So if you're unsure and you need support in what type of exercise program you're going to do, there's a lot of good people to help you with that. The other thing that I've certainly been focused on a lot over the last couple of years is exercise as a treatment with psychiatric diseases. So depression, anxiety, stress, schizophrenia. So depression, in several studies, they've shown that it's as effective as pharmacological treatment, dependent on intensity. Now, keep in mind, obviously, there's spectrums of depression, so I'm not going to say as a general that you can just replace all medication for depression, but it has shown a very valuable positive effect on people that do suffer from depression. They have increased self-esteem, increase in brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Now, here's the one I like. Contraindications, none. So there are no side effects to exercising if you have depression, okay? Anxiety. For those of you who may have had an anxiety attack or suffer from anxiety attacks, one effective way to treat anxiety is when somebody has an anxiety attack, they start sweating, their heart rate goes up, their blood pressure goes up, etc. So one way to treat that or to help them through that is you actually exercise them where you have the same physiological response. So you get their heart rate up, you get their blood pressure up, they start sweating. Those are the feelings they have when they're having an anxiety attack, okay? And then if you're doing it and simulating that with exercise, now you back the exercise off and they realize, oh, I am actually going to be okay. So introducing some of those different stressors in a healthy way can help people deal with them when it's attached to an emotion or something that may be spurring on that anxiety. It doesn't really matter. Our body doesn't recognize different types of stresses. There's going to be emotional stress, there's mental stress, there's psychological stress, there's environmental stress. So using healthy forms of stress and ways to manage that stress is a good coping mechanism. Stress, we all have stress in our life, as I just talked about, and there's various levels and spectrums of stress, but exercise can be a really good way to either decompress for stress or to prepare yourself for the stress that may be coming on during the day. So is that it? Is that all exercise does? Well, if you look at a lot of different books, and this now I'm going to focus on some of the non-physical benefits of exercise. We talked about treating musculoskeletal diseases. We talked about psychological diseases. But what about just in everyday life? Okay, I talked about earlier optimal performance. So you don't have to be an athlete to want to perform optimally every day. Okay, regardless of what your job is, whether you're going into the office every day for long hours or you're spending the weekend with kids. I think we all get frustrated if we don't perform the way that we kind of expect. Okay, so if we have a frustrating day with our kids or it doesn't go, we don't have as much energy around them, we're frustrated at the end of the day. And so how do you prepare yourself to be able to perform optimally regardless of what that is? Okay, and like I said, we deal with a lot of athletes, mostly hockey, but one of the biggest things that if you see in hockey, whether it's for practice or for a game, doesn't matter what level it's at, is the preparation that goes on before a game. So if a game's at 7 o'clock, it's not unheard of that athletes are there at 4 o'clock. Okay, I'm not saying you have to wind up for 3 hours before you go to work, but you should prepare and get your body and mind ready to be able to perform for the day, whether it's at work or with your kids, etc. So there's some day-to-day strategies that you can fit into your life, and maybe you're exercising at noon, maybe you're not exercising in the morning, but optimal way to perform really is to exercise first thing in the morning. Okay, soon as you get out of bed and get yourself going into the gym, that's a big accomplishment that you've already taken care of at the beginning of the day. So if you look at the importance of exercise and how it relates to health and mental fitness, if you take care of that in the morning, you really are taking care of yourself first before everything else happens. Okay, from there you can plan your day, have some breakfast, or maybe you're fasting, maybe you're not going to eat till lunch. Kind of visualize what's going to happen and then make your day top heavy. So I'm not talking about drawing this out for 4 or 5 hours before you go to work. The exercise could be a 15-minute walk, could be 20-minute bike ride in your basement, it could be going to the gym. Whatever fits, again, back to the awareness of fits into your lifestyle. What fits with your life? You got to feed your kids breakfast. What time do you have to get up? for 15, 20 minutes to kind of get yourself going and ready for the day. Make your day top heavy, and I'll get into some of this in a few minutes, is once you exercise, there's a window where you are really primed to be productive. And some of you may experience this already. If you haven't, try a couple days where you exercise before you go to work. And I'm not saying beat yourself up so bad in the gym that you're falling asleep at your desk at 10 in the morning, but prime yourself to be ready for the day. So make your day top heavy, as close to exercise at about a half hour and beyond. That's where you want to have your most difficult tasks that you have to complete for the day. There's a lot of evidence with different types of work that after lunch, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, if we're talking about a standard day, that productivity starts to decline after lunch. And you may feel like you have energy, and maybe you do have energy, but productivity starts to go down. So if we look way back at Newton's laws, Newton's first law, an object at rest tends to stay at rest, and an object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. So going back to the ambassador, asker, etc., do you have to be somebody else's external force? Do you need an external force to get yourself in motion during the day? Okay. Even for those of us that are very active all the time, when we do have a day where we can lounge around and kind of be lazy, there's nothing wrong with having those days, but you also know that, man, it's tough to get going. You know, you're sitting on the couch watching The Briar, for instance, for a couple hours, and you know, you want to kind of stay at rest when you're in that form, but when you're moving, you want to keep moving. There's definitely a brain-body connection, and motion is emotion, and emotion, vice versa, can be motion. And there's a physiological tie to those two. I'll get into some evidence about talking about the increase of learning with exercise. So I'm just going to cue you up here. So sticking with health, that was only non-alcoholic beer in that bar, but just kidding. But so what you see, kind of the reason I like that clip is everybody's tied into the soccer game, and you can see that emotion building up. It's getting intense. They don't know if you're going to win or lose. All of a sudden, they're allowed to release that emotion. And when they release that emotion, it's motion everywhere. They're jumping up in the air, hugging each other, high-fiving. And so you really do have to let that emotion flow through. And I mean, we've all been in a car where somebody cuts you off and you don't have the ability to really let that emotion out. And it's healthy to let out that emotion. Let it out through exercise. That's kind of the best way, one of the healthiest ways. Also, motion will make you happy. It gets you, once you get moving, it gets your brain moving, etc. There's a lot of healthy hormones that go through your brain. And so when I go back to the point earlier, do you need somebody to be your external force? And there's nothing wrong if you do. If it has to be a coach, if it has to be a friend, get yourself moving. So exercise really also primes the brain for learning on 3 different levels. So it optimizes mindset to improve alertness, attention, and motivation. I think we all know after a workout, we're pretty alert. We're kind of, you know, ready to tackle the day. Or if it's at night, we might be tackling the night after we do our exercise and taking care of things. It does on a cellular level. It prepares and encourages nerve cells to bind to one another. And it spurs the development of new nerve cells from stem cells in the hippocampus. Not to bore you with some of those details. So these are some interesting studies. And this is Naperville Central High School is a high school in Illinois of about 12,000 kids actually, and in a low income area. So it's an impoverished school. Many of the kids, they do have some breakfast programs, etc. But one of the studies they wanted to do is they wanted to look at what's the effect of exercise on academic performance? So they started this study for a year in a program, and what they had the kids do was run a mile before class. And each kid had a heart rate monitor. That was part of the sponsors for the study. They gave out heart rate monitors. So they had to run a mile, and they had to be between 80 to 90% of their max heart rate. And then they put them in class. Right after that, ran the mile. And what they found initially in the study were the kids were more focused. They were energetic, mental energy. They were getting a lot of work done. And so what they actually did was they started restructuring their curriculum. So I talked about a top-heavy day. They put the hardest classes at the beginning of the day. So the math, the science, etc. It was within half hour after they finished their mile run. Now, the trend in math and science study, this is an international study, and it looks at how different schools are doing with respect to math and science. So this Naperville High School actually finished first in science and sixth in math versus 18th and 19th for the rest of the US. There's also programs in California. So the California Department of Education, they call it the Fitnessgram, and it's state mandated. So every student gets their aerobic capacity tested, a body fat, abdominal strength, endurance, etc., and they receive a pass-fail in each category. What the data showed was that fit children scored twice as well on academic tests, regardless of socioeconomic status. This one is, so the title of this study is The Effects of Physical Exercise on Executive Function in Cognitively Healthy Older Adults, a systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized control trials, physical exercise for executive function. So I am currently taking care of my dad, who doesn't have a lot of executive function left. And so he's pretty far down the spectrum. Could be dementia, could be Alzheimer's. Honestly, to me, it doesn't matter. What we try to do is find the sweet spot where he can function during the day. And so, does he have working memory? No, his working memory is basically gone. So all of his executive function is at a very reduced capacity. But physically, he's about 50 years old. Chronologically, he's 80. His brain right now is probably beyond that. But really, with exercise, that makes his day flow. So we get up in the morning, we have breakfast, we go for a 45-minute to an hour walk. He starts to put things together. And right after that exercise, he's content, he's kind of at peace, he can hold a conversation. And then as the day goes on, he starts to fail a little bit. And then we have supper, take him for another walk, and then he kind of bounces back. So it's really interesting. This study is talking about in cognitive healthy older adults, but it certainly is a strategy that's worked well, with my dad to kind of settle him during the day. So we could talk about a lot of the mechanisms that go into brain health. It does promote synaptic plasticity, and that's really rewiring your brain to learn new skills or to learn new memories, growth and survival of neurons. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor is, it regulates neurogenesis, which is the development of new neurons, or it protects neurons. It also allows neurons to regenerate. And so it has been shown in several studies that exercise increases BDNF levels, and it is related to the intensity of exercise. So I always talk about this as the 4 Fs. I'm not going to go into a lot of the detail about this, but there's basically brain-derived neurotrophic factor, insulin-like growth factor, vascular endothelial growth factor, and fibroblast growth factor. All these are stimulated and elevated by exercise. And if you look at the right side of the figure, depending on which one of those molecules is elevated, it's going to increase acquisition or retention of information or a new skill. It does lead to proliferation, which is the division of cells, and neuronal differentiation, proliferation, and long-term potentiation. So basically what it does is exercise is stimulating a lot of the molecules in your brain that help for memory retention and a lot of that executive functioning that I talked about in the previous study. And here's just a graph that this is at rest. These are your BDNF levels, and then they are elevated with different types of exercise. High intensity interval training, you see a larger increase, but you still see a large increase here with concentric exercise. So I'm not really going to get into too much about the intensity or the different types of exercise. So lately, what's our societal support for exercise? And so I have no problem saying that it has been very poor. I think if you look at, obviously we're dealing with a pandemic, some of the things that were shut down, maybe justly or unjustly, really activity, movement, exercise probably wasn't at the forefront of a lot of those decisions. And when we look at the birth of the bike movement, so this is an article in the Free Press. So every spring, and we'll go through it again, there'll be advocates for more bike paths or more walking paths through Winnipeg. Well, this has gone on for over a century. So more than 150 years ago, in a struggle similar to the public debates, there was a group of bike enthusiasts that wanted to transform the city and make sure there were roads, biking roads or biking paths to be able to do it safely. Well, within a few years, the wheels fell off the project. So if we look at, this talking about Winnipeg Southwest Transitway, a project 50 years in the making. So the cost of that for 3.7 kilometers is $138 million. So, but it'll allow buses to travel up to 80 kilometers an hour, and it saves commuters an average of 10 minutes travel time. Well, if you're going 20 kilometers on a bike, which is approximately 13 miles per hour, which is a very modest pace, you will cover 3.7 kilometers in 11 minutes. Now, not everybody has a bike. $130 million divided by 750,000 Winnipeggers, everybody would get a $185 bike. Now, this might be in an extreme situation, but what I'm saying is, and what I'm talking about is, being an ambassador, being an advocate, being an asker. There isn't a lot of societal support. It kind of has to start with us and with each other and keep the movement going. So just in summary, exercise can be used to treat over 27 chronic conditions. Physical activity does improve focus, learning, memory, and neurogenesis. And there is a reciprocal link between motion and emotion. There is a lack of movement really does negatively affect us all. Again, this pandemic has been a great example of some of the additional stress that it's placed on us and family members when we haven't been able to be as active. Decide your role and get moving towards a healthier home, workplace, and society. So again, I ask you this question: are you an ambassador, an advocate, or an asker?
Get busy living or get busy dying. That's goddamn right.
Okay, so I'm probably about 2 or 3 minutes over. Sorry, Rhea.
No problem. Not at all. Not any over at all. Thanks very much. That was a great presentation. I will note, and maybe some of you noticed if you've listened to our other talks, Jeff, I'm assuming you were standing up while you were doing this presentation. Yeah, so we have had other ones, so I thought it was very fitting because we've had others about standing up while we're doing exercise. So you're a living embodiment of what we were already learning. So that's great.
Sorry to cut off on that note, Rhea. A lot of times when we're holding meetings, I've experimented with a sitting meeting and a standing meeting.
Yeah.
And just the energy in the room and the conversation and discussion is it's a lot more energetic when people are standing. So again, when you're at rest, your kind of brain starts to rest and relax. We always like lots of energy in the room.
No, that's great. I mean, and you go out a step further and you have a walking meeting. But this environment we live in now makes it a little difficult to walk unless you've got like a mobile laptop or some kind. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Oh, there's one that came in. Is it okay to exercise first thing in the morning with an empty stomach?
Yes, actually. So to go into the fast, and so breakfast is really breaking a fast. So you hear a lot of information about intermittent fasting, or people fast 2 or 3 days, etc. What your body's actually doing when you're sleeping is kind of using up all your glucose, and you're really dropping your blood sugar levels. And what fasts really do, depending on how you do it, is it starts to convert and utilize fat as an energy source. So fat is a very efficient energy source, actually better than carbohydrates and sugar. It may not be as readily available for certain types of exercise. And what they've actually shown is even after 24 hours of fasting, and I'm not going to go into that whole talk, but it actually spikes growth hormone. So that is an optimal time to exercise because your growth hormones are spiked up and for muscle building. So it's absolutely okay to exercise on an empty stomach. And, again, you can, that's going to be personal as well, right? So if you are low energy and everything, don't reach for the donut or something heavy with carbs. You might get a boost of energy and then you're going to kind of crash again. So look at different energy sources that maybe don't fill you up and make you feel bloated when you're exercising. But there's actually some evidence coming out there that exercising on an empty stomach or after a period of fasting is beneficial.
And I would assume, and you can comment, that diabetics would probably have a different answer.
Yeah. Again, it's, again, on a very individual basis. So there are, I don't like to make general statements, but if you're otherwise healthy, not on medication, if there isn't anything requiring you to have meal, then yeah, it's fine. And even if you do have to have a meal for various conditions, you can feel free to play with that, right? In terms of, when do you have your best workout? What do you eat before you have your best workout?
One other question, I guess, just to re-explain the top heavy day.
So the top heavy day, is really morning when we get up is, even though we may not feel it, but if after a short exercise, that's when we're going to have the most mental energy, as you call it. So your brain's kind of rested, it's repaired itself during sleep. Again, I'm ignoring or not paying attention to if somebody's a night shift worker, but let's say a 9-to-5 job. And so your body really goes through the process of cleaning out the bad protein while you're sleeping, etc. And your physical energy and your mental energy is going to be strongest in the morning. So we always talk about willpower. It's not you run out of actually mental energy to start making good decisions. And I think we've all had a long day, and at the end of the day, and you get home and there's a million other things going on, and you just have trouble making even what you want to put on your sandwich. You're just decision done at the end of the day. So with tasks that are going to take a lot of mental energy, that need a lot of focus, those are the ones that you want to plan earliest in the morning. And some strategies can be done at work, etc. If possible, you kind of want to push meetings to the afternoon, where you can do some of your deep work, etc. Afternoon, sometimes the social stimulus of a meeting might help bring up your kind of mental energy.
Great. I had a prof once in university who we had present, I won't give him away, who always said to me, do your least favorite task first thing in the morning. And so you kind of get that off your plate, and I can see your mental energy is there, and then you're not thinking about it throughout the whole day. It was great advice then, and that's a great scenario for the top heavy day. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? We'll give it a couple minutes. As you think, if you chat on anything, nope, that's all the same. I will again, thank Jeff for joining us in another Zoom meeting, and maybe you're doing lots of them now. I'm not sure. Everybody's a little different. Again, it was a great presentation. Next week, Tuesday, we have another presentation for our Fit Talk series. It's Don't Forget Your Balance with Sandra Weber. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about aerobic exercise and strength training and how it impacts our overall balance and why that's so important for us. So without any further ado, I will wish you all a great evening. Hopefully you're enjoying the warmer-ish weather, and as it gets warmer, you can be active outside. And if you're at the Reh-Fit, we look forward to seeing you, and keep coming. And thanks, Jeff, for a great evening.
Thank you, Rhea.
Thanks. Goodbye, everybody.